I was halfway through flipping the eggs when the front door creaked open. Not slammed, not kicked, just eased open like it was any other morning. I glanced at the clock. 6:30. She wasn't supposed to be back until Sunday night. Morning, babe. Carla's voice rang out. Too upbeat, too damn smooth. She walked in like she hadn't been gone for 4 days. Like she hadn't ghosted every one of my calls after Thursday afternoon. I didn't say anything. I just kept my eyes on the pan. My flight landed early, she chirped, dropping her purse by the coat rack. Figured I'd surprise you. She came up behind me and kissed my shoulder, then pulled back like she expected me to spin around and scoop her up. Quick note. Before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Carla was wearing a navy pantsuit I hadn't seen before. Her perfume hit me next, sharp, unfamiliar. Not the subtle stuff she usually wore to work. This was bold, musky, and way too strong for 6:30 in the morning. I kept my hand steady, plated the eggs, slid one dish toward her seat at the kitchen island. She blinked at it. Wow, you're up early, she said, pulling out the chair. Didn't peg you for the breakfast type. Still nothing from me. I grabbed a mug, poured hot water, dropped in a tea bag, jasmine green, her favorite, and set it down across from her plate. My own plate sat untouched. You okay? She asked, finally picking up on the cold air. I nodded once. Eat. It's hot. She paused, then picked up her fork. This looks great. Thank you. I sat across from her, resting my elbows on the table but not touching my food. Carla stabbed a piece of egg, chewed like everything was normal. It wasn't. You didn't have to go all out, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But it's sweet. I kept watching her. She shifted in her seat, glanced toward the hallway, then back at me. Her smile stayed frozen. She was performing, trying too hard to act like nothing had happened, like she hadn't disappeared behind a corporate curtain for half a week. The way her shoulders stayed up, too straight, like someone ready to pose for a picture, like she'd rehearsed this. I sipped my coffee, didn't say a word. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. She cut another bite. So, how was your weekend? I stared at the eggs and finally picked up my fork. Quiet, I said. Then I took the first bite. Carla kept chewing, slower now, like she was waiting for me to ask about her trip. I didn't. So, anything exciting happen around here while I was gone? She asked, dabbing her lips with a napkin. Her voice was lighter than usual, but her eyes were doing that thing, scanning, calculating. I shrugged. Just the usual. Cleaned up a bit. She tilted her head. Cleaned? You? Yeah, I said, standing to grab her mug and head for the kettle. Figured the house could use a reset. She smirked, but it flickered. That's not like you. It is now, I said. I turned away so she couldn't see my face. The kettle was starting to rumble. I let the silence stretch, leaning against the counter while the water heated. Carla tapped her nails on the table. Her gaze drifted again, toward the hallway, like something was nagging at her. Did you move something in the kitchen? She asked suddenly. I glanced over my shoulder. Nope. I swear the spice rack looks different. I wiped the counters. Maybe you're just noticing that. She stared at me a second longer before giving a little laugh. Too forced. Right? Maybe that's it. I set the clean mug down and reached for the box of teas. Carla stood and walked over, scanning the shelf above the stove. Her fingers hovered for a second. Where's my yellow mug? The one with the sunflowers? I grabbed a tea bag without looking at her. No idea. Really? Her tone sharpened, just slightly. It's always been right here. Guess it's not anymore. The kettle screamed, sharp and high-pitched. I turned it off, poured the water, and set the mug on the counter without saying anything else. Carla didn't pick it up right away. She looked at me, really looked this time, and I saw the twitch in her jaw. Just a small thing barely there, but it was new. She was catching on, even if she didn't know what to call it yet. I'm gonna sit in the living room, she said, brushing past me. Jet lag's starting to hit. I nodded once, stayed in the kitchen. She moved softly, almost cautiously, like the floor might shift under her. I heard the soft thud of her steps, then the subtle squeak of the leather couch. She settled in. I let a few seconds pass before I grabbed my own mug and followed her, slow and quiet. As I turned the corner into the living room, I froze. She was sitting on the couch, staring at the coffee table. There was a sound, soft but not background noise. Not the AC. Not traffic. Something had shifted, something touched. "What was that?" she asked without looking at me. I didn't answer, just walked over and stood behind the armchair watching her. She reached forward slowly, like she didn't trust her own hands. There was a coaster pushed slightly out of place, and a thin layer of dust on the edge of the glass tray, except for one clean rectangle where something used to be. Her eyes flicked to the side table, then the bookshelf. She didn't say anything, and I wasn't about to help her fill in the blanks. She leaned back into the couch, her shoulders tightening. She tucked her feet up, like she was trying to make herself smaller. I could feel it now. The rhythm of the room was off, like two people playing different songs on the same piano. She lifted her mug and sipped her tea, eyes locked on the table. I stayed where I was, silent. She wasn't used to this version of me. Too bad. Carla set her mug down slowly, the clink sharper than it needed to be. She looked up at me, her tone suddenly flatter. "Are you expecting someone?" I didn't blink. "Yeah." She didn't move for a second. Her lips parted like she had something to say, but nothing came out. Her eyes narrowed, not angry, calculating. "Who?" she asked. I took a sip of my coffee. "You'll see." That was it. Her back straightened. "Nick. If someone's coming over, I have a right to know." I didn't respond. She stood up, but not fast. Cautious. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward the front of the house. Then I heard it. The faintest knock. Carla froze. I didn't move. I stayed leaning against the wall, mug in hand, like I had all the time in the world. "You invited someone here?" Her voice cracked, barely. "Right now." "They're already here," I said. She took one step toward the hallway, then another. The floor creaked under her weight. "Nick." She turned her head halfway toward me. "What's going on?" I didn't answer, just watched her walk. Her steps slowed as she got to the archway that led to the front room. She paused at the edge, one hand lightly resting against the wall, then stepped through. Silence. Then I heard it, her breath catching. A sharp inhale like she'd walked into a freezer. I stayed in the kitchen, listening. "Rachel." Carla's voice came out small. "Hi, Carla," came the reply, calm, collected, almost gentle. "It's been a while." Rachel didn't sound surprised. Carla did. I finally stepped into the hallway, just far enough to see both of them in the front room. Carla stood like she'd hit a wall. Her whole posture changed, shoulders drawn in, feet together. She looked younger all of a sudden, unsure. Rachel was seated in the armchair, legs crossed, hands folded in her lap. No coat, no purse, no phone in hand. Just sitting there like she belonged. Carla's voice wobbled. "What are you doing here?" Rachel looked over at me, then back at her. "I'm here for Nick." Not loud, not smug, just matter of fact. Carla blinked hard, her mouth opening, then closing again. She looked at me, waiting for context. I gave her none. "She's here to help me with something," I said. That was all. Carla turned fully to me now, her face a mix of confusion and something else. Fear, maybe. Her hands curled into fists, then released. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Rachel didn't move, didn't smirk, just sat there watching, like she'd already seen how this would play out. Carla forced a laugh. "So you're bringing old friends into our house now?" I raised an eyebrow. "Thought you'd be happy to see a familiar face." That landed. She flinched barely, but I caught it. She shifted her weight, looked back at Rachel, then at the door like she was weighing her options. Fight or flee. Rachel tilted her head slightly. "You okay, Carla?" Carla's lips pressed into a tight line. "Fine." But she wasn't. Not even close. The mask she'd been wearing since she walked through that door. Cheerful, breezy, in control, was slipping. And for the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to fix it. I just stood there watching it fall. Rachel didn't flinch under the stare. She sat there like she owned the silence. "Nice place," she said to Carla, smooth and calm, like they were catching up at a reunion. "You've made it cozy." Carla stood frozen. Her mouth twitched like she wanted to say something back, but nothing came out. I stepped further into the room. "She's here to help me finalize something." That pulled Carla's eyes straight to mine. "Finalize what?" I didn't answer. Rachel leaned back in the chair, crossing her legs the other way. "Nick and I reconnected a few months ago. Strictly business." That word business hit hard. Carla's jaw tensed. She let out a laugh that didn't match her face. "Right? Business. I'm sure." I moved to stand near the hallway entrance, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. "It is." Carla looked between us like she couldn't decide who to confront first. "So what, you just let her in? No heads up?" "She knocked," I said. She shot a glare at Rachel. "And you're just comfortable walking into someone else's marriage like this?" Rachel didn't even blink. "I was invited." Carla opened her mouth again, but Rachel kept going. "I didn't come here for drama, Carla. I came because Nick asked me to." That confidence, it wasn't arrogance, but it was enough to throw Carla off balance. She took a step toward me. "What the hell is this?" she asked, quieter now. "Some twisted surprise?" "No surprise," I said. "You just weren't paying attention." Carla turned back to Rachel. "This is what you do now? Show up in other people's houses with zero explanation?" Rachel smiled, polite but cold. "I work in legal operations. Clarity is my job." That line hit its mark. Carla's mouth clamped shut. I stepped closer to the edge of the room. "She's been helping me clean up some paperwork." Carla's face shifted, not shock. Realization. "Wait," she said, her voice sharp. "What paperwork?" Rachel glanced at me like she was waiting to see how much I wanted to say. I kept my tone flat. "Stuff that's been sitting too long." Carla crossed her arms. "You're being vague on purpose." "Maybe," I said. The air got heavier. Carla was searching for footing, but there wasn't any. She started pacing, 3 steps to the window, 3 steps back. Rachel didn't move. She stayed planted like nothing Carla did could touch her. "So this is revenge," Carla muttered. "No," I said. "This is accountability." Carla stopped walking. Her eyes burned into mine. "I can't believe you'd bring her here. After everything." "You disappeared for 4 days," I said calmly. "I didn't know if you were coming back. I was at a retreat." I cut her off. "Yeah, you mentioned that." Rachel stood now, slowly, adjusting her blazer like she had all the time in the world. "If you'd prefer I leave, I can. But what we're doing doesn't really involve you. Yet." That one landed hard. Carla turned away. Her hands were shaking now, barely noticeable, but I saw it. She cleared her throat. "You think dragging someone into this changes anything?" "I didn't drag anyone," I said. "I called her." She answered. Carla stared out the window for a second, then turned around. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The cracks in her mask weren't subtle anymore. Carla stood there, silent, and I could almost hear the gears grinding behind her eyes. I stepped toward the hallway and nodded once. "Come on. You should see the rest." She hesitated. Rachel stayed put. I didn't wait. I turned and walked. A few seconds later, I heard Carla's footsteps behind me. Slower now. We passed the kitchen and stopped at the den. I pushed the door open. Carla stepped in behind me. The rug was gone. The one her mom gave us after our wedding. Replaced by cold hardwood. She didn't say anything, but I watched her eyes catch the gap immediately. "I've been making some changes," I said, keeping my tone flat. "Tidying up. Getting rid of things that didn't belong." She glanced toward the shelves. "Where are the travel books?" "Boxed," I said. Didn't feel like dreaming about Tuscany anymore. She stepped closer to the shelves and ran her finger along the spine of a new row. Sun Tzu, Leadership in War, Psychological Warfare in Business. She forced a chuckle. Light reading. Strategic, I said. Her hand froze halfway across the shelf. She didn't turn around. I watched her scan the room. No more candle sets, no decorative pillows, no throw blankets folded neatly like a catalog spread. Just clean lines and bare wood. Then her eyes landed on the photo by the window. She walked up to it slowly. It was the only framed picture left in the entire house. Me at 17, covered in dirt, stacking bricks behind a hardware store. Her voice dropped. You kept this one? I like that version of me, I said. She turned around. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being honest. Carla tried to laugh again, but it didn't carry. Nick, this is weird. You're acting like... I cut her off. Like someone who finally had time to see things for what they were. She took a step toward me. This isn't you. You're not cold like this. Maybe I've been too warm for too long. I walked back to the kitchen without waiting for a reply. Rachel was still there, standing by the counter. You want coffee? I asked her. She smiled. Sure. I poured her a cup, handed it over, then turned as Carla entered behind me. Her eyes bounced from the missing decor to the nearly empty countertop. Even the toaster? She muttered. Didn't need it. This place doesn't feel like a home anymore, she said. It wasn't, I replied. It was a stage. She stiffened. So this is a performance now? No, I said, walking past her toward the living room. This is the teardown. She followed me, her voice climbing. You think you're proving something with this minimalist mess? That you've evolved? Grown cold and detached, and somehow that makes you the winner? I stopped and faced her. I think I've stopped pretending. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Rachel stepped into the room behind her and took a seat again, sipping calmly. Her presence added weight to every inch of space. Carla looked around, really looked, the missing wedding photos, the empty wall where the mirror used to be, the shelf with the souvenirs from Aruba wiped clean. I let her soak in the silence. You really erased everything, she said finally. No, I said. I left one thing behind. She blinked at me. What? The man who built this place. She didn't respond. Just stood there, surrounded by the ghost of the life she curated. One throw pillow and filtered Instagram post at a time. Rachel sipped her coffee again. I leaned back against the armrest. This is what truth looks like, Carla. Raw, boring, unfiltered. She looked smaller now. Not physically, just shrunk. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. She got the message. Carla stood near the couch, arms crossed tight like she was bracing for a storm that hadn't even hit yet. Her eyes flicked toward Rachel, then back to me. Whatever this is, she said. You've made your point. You rearranged the furniture, took down some pictures, invited your little consultant. Okay, are we done? I walked to the hall closet and pulled out a small black file box. It was already unlatched. I brought it over to the coffee table and set it down with a quiet thud. Carla's arms dropped slightly. What's that? I opened it. The first folder on top was labeled in bold Sharpie. Carla, travel claims. I pulled it out and laid it flat. Her voice dropped. Are you serious right now? I flipped it open. March 3rd. You told me you had a full-day strategy summit in Richmond. Except the hotel you stayed at? Not in Richmond. Not even close. Boutique place in Asheville. 2 nights. Spa package. That was comped through my company, she shot back. They changed locations last minute. No, they didn't, I said, calmly sliding a printout across the table. I called the office. Strategy summit was in Richmond. You weren't on the attendee list. And the spa receipt? That was charged to our joint card. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I reached back into the box. April 7th. Same story. This time you said Orlando. Company-wide meeting. Except you stayed in Clearwater. Beachfront suite. She didn't respond. I dropped another sheet in front of her. You know what's funny? Your company issued a per diem for meals, but you paid out of pocket at a restaurant that doesn't take reservations for single diners. Name on the receipt matches the one from the spa. Carla and guest. Nick. I cut her off. Then there's the GPS data. Pulled from your phone's backup. You parked at the same address in Raleigh 5 weekends in a row. Some guy named Jared? Ring a bell? Her face drained. I watched the panic crawl in behind her eyes. She opened her mouth again, tried to shape some excuse, but her voice barely worked. This is insane, she whispered. You went through my phone? No, I said. I went through the backup logs you left on the shared cloud. You forgot to disable them. Carla glanced at Rachel, who hadn't said a word. She just sipped her coffee, posture steady, eyes sharp. This is insane, Carla repeated louder. You're what? Tracking my every move now? Reading into everything? I didn't start there, I said. I started with receipts. I pulled out a manila folder, flipped it open and held up 2 restaurant charges made the same night. One in Atlanta, one in Boston. Both under her name. Same card, same hour. Pick one. Carla stepped back, rubbing her temples. You don't know the full story. I tilted my head. Then tell me. She looked like she might say something, then stopped. I leaned forward. No, that's what I thought. Her mouth trembled just enough to show. I set the folder down and pulled another from the stack. Call logs. July. You told me you were visiting your sister in Denver for the weekend. Called her. She said she hadn't seen you in months. Carla's voice cracked. I needed space. You got it, I said. And I got answers. She dropped into the chair like her legs gave out, hands gripping the armrests. I slid the rest of the folders back into the box, one by one. Rachel still hadn't said a thing. She didn't need to. I sat down on the edge of the coffee table, facing Carla. I didn't do this because I was paranoid, I said. I did it because I finally stopped trusting your words more than your actions. Carla didn't look up, and I didn't flinch. Carla sat slumped in the chair, like everything she'd been holding together was slipping through her fingers. I reached into the file box one last time. This is the part you're gonna like least, I said, pulling out a thick white envelope. She looked up, eyes glossy but hard. If this is another one of your... It's not a report, I said, cutting her off. It's a list of assets. Every major thing we've acquired since we got married. I handed it to her. She hesitated, then ripped the flap open and flipped through the first couple pages. Her face twitched, confused, then pissed. These are in your name, she said. Correct. She looked up. The second property. Moved to me last fall. Quiet title transfer. The joint stocks. Sold. Reinvested under a single-owner LLC. Mine. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I started the paperwork right after you missed our anniversary last year, I said. You were in San Diego, remember? Supposed to be a leadership retreat. I was. Room was booked for 2, I snapped. I checked. She shoved the papers back at me, but I didn't take them. What are you trying to do, Nick? Cut me out of my own life? I'm securing mine, I said. You've had yours. I've watched you live it off the books, off the record. Meanwhile, I was here building this house, paying the bills, and trusting every lie you smiled through. Carla stood up now, trying to take up space again. Okay, you've been hurt. I get it. But we can talk about this. We're already talking, I said, holding my ground. And I've been preparing for this conversation for months. She glanced at Rachel, then back at me. You planned this whole thing? Yes. You brought her here for this? She asked, her voice cracking. No, Rachel answered calmly. He brought me in to review the structure of the trust. Carla blinked. What trust? Rachel leaned forward. The one Nick set up under a separate legal entity last December. It holds everything he transferred. Sealed, protected, and notarized. Carla's hands clenched at her sides. That's not legal. I didn't consent. You weren't required to, Rachel said. You signed off on the base documents years ago when the LLC was formed. Check your signature page. Carla looked like someone just pulled the floor out from under her. She turned to me, rage breaking through the confusion now. You were planning to blindside me this whole time? No, I said. I was planning to stop being blindsided by you. I walked over to the armchair and sat down slowly, letting that silence stretch. Rachel said nothing more. She just watched. Carla held the asset list like it might catch fire in her hands. Her eyes scanned the page again, faster this time, like she could read her way out of it. She couldn't. She whispered, "You were never like this." "I was never forced to be," I said. She looked at me then, really looked, like she didn't recognize what was in front of her anymore. Good, because I didn't recognize her either. Carla stood there clutching the asset list, her chest rising faster now, eyes darting between me and Rachel like she still hadn't figured out who to aim at. "This is manipulation," she finally snapped. "You've engineered all of this just to paint me as the villain." I didn't move. No, I just documented everything you didn't think I'd notice. You were spying on me. I was listening to the silence between your lies. She stepped forward, waving the papers in her hand. "This isn't a marriage. This is some kind of sick audit." "No," I said. "That's what you turned it into. I'm just doing the math now." She stopped, shaking her head hard like that'd make it all vanish. "Nick, come on. We don't have to do this here. Not like this. You're angry, I get it. But you blindsided me. With her," she pointed at Rachel. "And this setup, we need help, not lawyers." I let out a breath. Help should have started 2 years ago. Not after you built a second life out of conference calls and fake trips. Carla took another step closer. Her voice dropped, pleading now. "What if we try therapy? Like real therapy this time. I'll commit. I swear to you. We can work on this. We've been together too long to just burn it down." I looked her dead in the eye. "I'm not here to fix anything, Carla. I'm here to close the door." Her mouth trembled again. "You're willing to just throw this away?" "You threw it away," I said. "I just finally stopped catching it every time you dropped it." She turned to Rachel, her voice rising. "And you're just standing there, supporting this?" Rachel met her stare. "I'm not here to support anything. I'm here to make sure it's clean." Carla looked back at me, eyes wide, voice shaking now. "Nick, we have a life. Friends. Family. What are you going to tell them?" "The truth," I said. "That I lived with someone who smiled through betrayal and thought I'd never open my eyes." She started to pace again, one hand in her hair, the other gripping her wrist. "This isn't happening. This isn't real." I looked at Rachel. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. No hesitation. She handed it to me. I stood up and held it out toward Carla. "This is real." She didn't take it at first, just stared at it like it was radioactive. "What is that?" she whispered. "Separation agreement," I said. "Filed. Signed. Legal." Carla stepped back like I just hit her. "You already filed?" I nodded. No, this is too fast. This isn't how it works." "It's exactly how it works when one person's been ready and the other's been lying." She stared at the envelope. Her arms slowly dropped to her sides. I thought you'd yell, break things, cry. Not this." I shrugged. "I did all that already. You just weren't around to see it." The silence after that hit harder than anything else. Carla finally took the envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it and scanned the first page. Her lips moved silently, reading or trying to. When she looked back up, she wasn't angry anymore, just stunned. "You planned this for months?" "Yes." "You had her draft this?" "No," Rachel said calmly. "His attorney did. I just reviewed it." Carla looked at me like she didn't recognize my face. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you warn me?" "Because you would have twisted it," I said. "Same way you twisted everything else. I needed it done before you had a chance to rewrite the story." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "And you're proud of this?" I paused. "No, but I'm not sorry." Carla held the envelope like it was a live wire. her fingers barely gripping the edges. I watched her face shift. Anger, panic, disbelief. All of it crashing into the same dead end. "I can't sign this," she said, her voice cracking. "You don't have to," I replied. "It's already filed. But we haven't even talked about it. There's no discussion, no compromise?" "This is the result of all the conversations you walked away from," I said. "You just didn't hear them." She stepped toward me. "Nick, wait. Let's just take a breath. We can sit down, the three of us, figure out a path forward." "There is no path forward," I said. "You're being cold." "No," I said. "I'm being finished." She looked like she might collapse, like the walls of the house were finally closing in. Her voice dropped low, hollow. "Was it all fake? All those years? Did any of it matter to you?" I didn't answer right away. I let that question hang in the air between us. Then I said, "What matters is I finally chose myself." Carla didn't say anything. Her shoulders sank, eyes darting around the room like maybe there was still something left to hold on to. There wasn't. I walked toward the hallway. She didn't follow until I turned and waited. I didn't touch her. I didn't speak. I just stood there, steady, and after a long pause, she picked up her purse off the floor with a shaking hand. Her heels echoed against the hardwood as she walked. She stopped just before the front door, staring at it like maybe it would swing open on its own and wake her up. "Nick," she whispered. Her voice was gone. I opened the door. She turned slowly, met my eyes one last time, and stepped through. I didn't slam it behind her. I just closed it. Quiet, clean. The way it should have been from the start. I turned back to the house. It was still stripped down, still honest. And finally, mine.